Pete Gati, BMSN. Okay, we made a cruise. We were going to, we were in Guantanamo down there for anti-submarine warfare training because it was cold up north. And we come out of the yards. We had the new helo deck, and we're down there. And the captain says, okay. He goes over the loudspeaker and says, okay, I want you guys to vote. Where do you want to go? Jamaica? He gave us about 3 choices. Everybody said Jamaica. Okay. First class boat says to me, listen, when we firing them guns, snatch as many of them 5-inch. Okay, you got a projectile and you got a 5-inch powder. The powder is in a brass. I said, what are you going to do with that? He says, I want as many as you can get. I said, okay. So I took about 5 or 6 of them because the gunner's mates usually take them, they save them, and they bring them back, the brass. When we got to Jamaica, out comes a boat. And the first class says to me, come on, break that brass out you got. I take the brass out. He says, how much line do we have? We got new mooring lines. We got nylon. They were introducing nylon to the fleet then, so we had a lot of old 6-inch manila. Manila. So I says, I don't know. I says, got a whole lot of it up there on deck. He says, bring that down. So, you can't bring the whole reel down, so I would cut off 20, 30 feet of it and bring it down up to the forecastle. And he's talking back. Now, the Navy is a barter system. They come aboard, the Jamaicans, we give them the brass, the line, we get the paint, and they paint the ship, the whole hull, all the way around. That was done in Hong Kong all over. So, I got introduced to that. Yeah, we just, they would come. Now I got to tell you something funny. So we go back to Norfolk. Back to Charleston. And the first class says to me, we're going to repaint the numbers on the bow. He says, paint all the haze gray in, and we're going to redo the numbers. Now on the hull, there's wells, and you follow the well with tape, and you can do the numbers. Big numbers, big. He says, I want you to, almost like a Home Depot with all naval supplies. You go there on the base, and you get what you want, and they charge you to the ship. He says, I want you to get rubberized paint. Now, this is the first I ever heard of rubberized paint. Everything else was oil-based. Okay. Get the rubberized paint. He says, paint the numbers and the name of the ship on the stern. I said, okay. I get a whole bunch of guys, get the stages over the side, they doing the numbers. Look good. We go out to sea. Now the problem starts. First wave comes up over the bow. Second wave comes up over the bow. Guess what? No numbers. Got washed away. Rubberized paint did not work in salt water. When we got back, we had to redo the numbers with the paint that we always used. Now I can tell you a funny story. We happened to be in Norfolk, and we're painting the side of the ship. I got the guys over the side painting. They're called camels, like a float. And they would sit there and paint. I said, okay, knock off a chow. Come on up. I'm down on the mess decks. All of a sudden, Gati, BM, report to the quarterdeck. I said, what the hell? I report to the quarterdeck. Officer says to me, go over to that other pier. Go over to the pier, and I says, oh, damn it. Well, when you get a bunch of 17, 18-year-old kids that like to do, they wrote F-U on the side of the ship in fresh paint. One of the other ships happened to see this. Like I said, bunch of kids. We're in Charleston. Now the first class says to me, listen, I want you to empty out the paint locker and get rid of all them 5-gallon cans of eggshell white. Them guys in the engine room will never use that. That's what we stored it for. The engine room, when they wanted white paint, because the engine rooms are painted white. He says, they're never going to use that eggshell. I said, okay. He said, what do you want me to do with it? He says, throw it in that dumpster on the pier. Okay. Well, it so happened we got a bunch of reservists aboard from Brooklyn. And I says, hey, listen, all that paint down in the paint locker, that white paint, is probably about 15 5-gallon cans of paint. Throw it in that dumpster on the pier. Okay. I didn't stick around. I go down to the mess decks like a real boatswain, get a cup of coffee, tell war stories with the other guys down there. I go back up. Everything looked good. The next day, up come a destroyer. Now they usually tie up alongside each other. Tied up, no problem. All of a sudden, I hear a clanking. I look over, oh, they're lowering the anchor, so they're probably going to paint the chain. One of the guys that I said to throw that paint out, he comes over to me and says, uh-oh, we got a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, look. I look. Well, when that anchor hit the bottom, it busted open a couple of them cans of paint they threw over the side. Now, up is white. Up runs the boats. He says, what's that? I said, that's the paint that was supposed to go into the dumpster. He says, get that crew over there and clean that mess up. Because the white, okay, you got haze gray, and then below that, you got the water line. Both ships had to be cleaned up. We spent almost all day cleaning that mess up. And when they brought up that anchor, guess what? A couple of cans were stuck on that anchor chain, on the anchor. Bunch of kids. I'm both made to watch on the way. And where the bridge is on the ship, you got the wheel, the lee helm with the engines, the phone talker. Directly in back of us is 2 steps down is the sea cabin. That's where the captain on the way stays at sea. Sea cabin. I don't know really what transpired between the captain and his officer, but he come running up. Now, on the bridge is the OOD, the officer of the deck, and the conning officer. The conning officer gives orders to the helm, the lee helm, which controls the engines, and the rest of the enlisted crew up there. The officer of the deck is overall in charge. So the captain comes running up and tells this officer, get off of this bridge and don't come back up here for the whole cruise. Now I'm boatswain to watch, in charge of the enlisted personnel. So everybody's looking around at each other. Nobody said nothing. I ain't getting involved into this. I don't know what transpired, but he did something wrong. And they kick him off the bridge. The officer of the deck turns around and says, who's going to be the conning officer? Captain looks at me. Gati, you got the con. I never heard an enlisted man have it. Quartermaster logs all of this. He says, do I log that? Officer's deck says, log it. So they logged me in as a conning officer. The officer of the deck walks over me and says to me, listen, real quiet, any course changes or any engine changes, I'll tell you, you can relay it. I said, okay, thank you. So for that whole watch, I I was doing the officer's job. But after that, the officers were bitching because they had to make up for this officer's, whatever he did. So they had to double up on their watches.